Hi, I'm Chap Bettis, author of The Disciple Making Parent, and this is my audio blog, where I read some of my blog posts in audio format for your convenience. Well, in today's episode, we're going to be thinking about what is leadership in the home. 1 Timothy 3:4 says, "He, an overseer, must manage his own household well, with all dignity keeping his children submissive." 1 Timothy 3:12 says, "Let deacons each be the husband of one wife, managing their children and their own households well." Scriptures tell us that elders and deacons are to manage their household well. And the word translated manage is used in Romans 12:8 and translated as leadership. So that we could say that an elder or deacon, they're to lead their households and children well. Yet in spite of the fact that all parents are to be leaders, few actually think clearly about what a godly leader does. Having a clear understanding of godly leadership will help an individual in the home and in the church. So what exactly is leadership? Can we try and define it? And what is uniquely Christian leadership? Leadership rooted and influenced by the gospel. Well, defining leadership is a little like defining the wind. We know it when we see it in action, but trying to grasp it or describe it, that's difficult. Ultimately, leadership is influence. It's moving others to do or be something different, and it can be used for good or it can be used for evil. Apart from the gospel, it's using persuasion, power, emotions, fear, or ideas so that others are following. But we don't just want any leadership. We want godly leadership. Robert Clinton, author of The Making of a Leader, has defined Christian leadership in this way. Leadership is a dynamic process in which a man or woman with a God-given capacity influences a specific group of God's people towards His purposes for the group. Let me repeat that again. Leadership is a dynamic process in which a man or woman with a God-given capacity influences a specific group of God's people towards His purposes for that group. This definition emphasizes several things. It's a dynamic process. It's fluid and energized. It's not static. The capacity comes from God, and that can vary from person to person. And the people that we're to lead are a specific group and belong to God and not the leader. The purposes that he or she is to influence them toward are God's purposes. And that roots a leader's authority in the Word. And it requires a leader to go to the Word and pray for guidance. Finally, the leader's job is to influence them, not control them. People have varying degrees of openness to influence. Well, John Piper's definition of spiritual leadership is similar, where he says this: spiritual leadership is knowing where God wants people to be and taking the initiative to get them there in reliance on God's power. To summarize, we could say that a good leader, 1, has an idea of where a group of people should go, 2, understands where the group currently is, and 3, understands how to move them to where they should go, and 4, takes the initiative to accomplish this. The implication at this point for Christian parents is obvious. We become better shepherds when we understand God's call on our children, when we understand where they are truly at, and when we understand God's means of moving them, and then when we act on this. Well, let's talk about 3 different types of influence. How does that influence occur? Clinton helps us even further by describing the 3 types of influence or power a leader can have. Some leaders influence by their position or the office they hold. Think of the military officer who commands. Others influence by their personal power, the example they have. Think of a movie or sports star who we find ourselves imitating. With them, it's their personal power. Still others influenced by their persuasive power, their words and ideas. Think of a teacher or a preacher who knows more than we do. And of course, these 3 overlap: the positional power, the personal power and the persuasive power. They aren't exclusive. The application for a disciple-making parent is obvious. We're meant to use all three. God has put us in the position of authority. You are the parent. You lead by making decisions for the good of your children. You impose rules and correction. In addition, you're commanded to be an example to your children. They're imitation machines, and we should be worthy of their imitation. So that's personal power. But finally, you're commanded to teach your children, and that's persuasive power as well. Positional influence, personal influence, and persuasive influence. When all three of those come together in a godly way, there is great power. Dad and Mom, mature godliness is leading your household well. Whether or not God has called you to lead in your church, He's called you to lead in your home. You can lead well or you can lead poorly. Home is meant to be a small training ground for God to develop all of us as leaders. Thank you for listening to the Disciple Making Parent audio blog. This ministry is equipping families to stand strong against the rising antagonism to the gospel. After all, what's more important to us than the souls of our children and grandchildren? But we can only do this ministry because of people like you who support the ministry through monthly or special gifts. If you benefited from this ministry, would you prayerfully consider becoming a monthly or regular financial partner? Visit the disciplemakingparent.com/give. Thanks for listening.